Thanks, Ellie, very much, and everyone who helps to make these events happen. It's really refreshing to see people engaged in their community and wanting to make a difference politically. And this is the third time I've been to the Freedom Forum, and I'm really excited tonight to announce the official kickoff of our recall of Sheriff Phil Wowak from the Office of Sheriff Coroner here in Santa Cruz County. And I'm particularly excited because he showed up tonight, and which is, awesome. I think it's great. We've been wanting to speak with him and debate the issues and talk about the issues and the role of the sheriff for a long time. I think it'll be a good dialogue, and I hope we can keep it respectful, and we can have a dialogue. I think all of us here in our various ways have the best interest of the Santa Cruz community at heart. So, yeah. So, why are we wanting to recall the sheriff? It hasn't happened for a long time, as my understanding in Santa Cruz County. But there are some very important reasons why we've taken this step, why members of the community have decided that the sheriff is not fulfilling his duty to the people, and why we've taken the step of launching a recall petition. Now, this will take place over the next, I think, approximately 4.5 months. We have to collect approximately 14,000 signatures, which is 10% of the registered voters of Santa Cruz County. It's not impossible. It's a tall order, and it means that people need to be engaged and contribute their time and money and energy into this effort. But why are we talking about this at all? Well, on January 11th, the Santa Cruz County Board of Supervisors passed Ordinance number 5084, which prohibited Pacific Gas and Electric or any other utility from installing smart meters, wireless smart meter devices, gas or electric, on any business or home in the county of Santa Cruz. That ordinance was passed unanimously by the board, and it was in response to a drumbeat of citizens coming forward and speaking up to the board, not only about how people were being injured by smart meters in other areas of the state and smart meters that had already been installed in Santa Cruz County, but how people are increasingly being injured by wireless devices in general. And now smart meters are a very powerful wireless device. PG&E claims that they are only 1,000th the power of a cell phone, something like that, and that they only radiate 45 seconds a day. The truth is that the cumulative whole body exposure of a smart meter is approximately 100 to 150 times the strength of a cell phone, according to Dan Hirsch, a nuclear policy expert from UC Santa Cruz, who did the analysis. And the 45 seconds a day that PG&E claims is technically correct, but that 45 seconds is divided into 15,000 or more millisecond bursts throughout the day. So they send a signal about every 5 or 6 seconds. And I understand there's a smart meter now on this building. I was just sitting here with a measuring device, and we were noticing the spikes about every 6 seconds. So this is something that is fundamentally changing the physical environment, not only here in this room where we're sitting, but throughout the county. And that's the point. This is not, PG&E would like to present this as an individual thing. Well, we don't want a smart meter on your house. You don't have to have one. You can pay us hundreds of dollars and you can opt out. That's their ideal solution. But the reality is that living in a society which is increasingly burdened with microwave radiation in all its forms, from cell towers, Wi-Fi, cell phones, baby monitors, smart meters, we're reaching a point where the smart meters might be the straw that broke the camel's back in terms of exceeding our natural ability to absorb microwave radiation. Now, we evolved without any exposure to microwave radiation at all, or very minimal. The only natural sources of microwaves in that frequency that we're talking about is from lightning, which is obviously quite rare. And interestingly enough, the redwood trees evolved a natural resistance to microwave radiation. So if you have a house made of redwood, it's better insulating against microwaves than other woods. And there may be a reason for that. Redwoods tend to be the tallest trees. They're the tallest trees on the planet. And they're subject to lightning strikes. So it was an adaptation for a redwood tree to resist microwave radiation that came naturally from lightning. But it wasn't for us. We never evolved the capacity to deal with this stuff. And now we're seeing an increasing number of people in our community who are suffering, in some cases severely, from microwave radiation. And the smart meters are about 10 times the strength in terms of peak pulse of a Wi-Fi router, approximately. And the fact that these are going off all the time and they're always chattering with each other means that people who have become sensitive, or people who were sensitive before, in some cases can no longer live in their homes comfortably or safely, or even at all. And that represents a monumental taking of private property by a private utility company and the Public Utilities Commission. And these are all, and so that's just the health aspect. Over the last 12 months, we've seen dramatic reversals from international and national health agencies about this issue. On May 31st, the World Health Organization categorized non-ionizing radiation as a class 2B carcinogen, a possible carcinogen. And the industry is very quick to note that, oh, well, you know, coffee and pickles are in the same category. But the truth is that the type of pickle that are in the category 2B, carcinogen, is a very rare pickle that's found in China, and the pickling agent that they use is carcinogenic. And it's notable that no substance has gone into the category of 2B, and then they decide, oh, well, it's actually not a carcinogen. The way things typically happen is that a substance comes into question, peer-reviewed research goes on that indicates that there's a problem, it goes into the possible carcinogen category, then the probable carcinogen, and then definite carcinogen. So that's sort of as more evidence comes in. So the National Institutes of Health came out with a study that really blew some serious holes in the Federal Communications Commission's safety limits. And these safety limits are some of the highest in the world. So if these smart meters were being installed in Russia, if they were being installed in Austria, in Switzerland, and a number of other countries, they would actually exceed the safety limits set by those countries for human exposure, and they would be illegal. But the high FCC limits allow this kind of Wild West phenomena to happen where people are putting up antennas everywhere, they're not really being measured, you know, they can basically do what they want with very little oversight. The FCC regulators come out, they measure the power, a lot of the time the cell phone companies will turn down the power before the FCC comes out, and then when they leave, they turn it back up. There's just shenanigans that you hear about where health and safety isn't put first. And interesting study in February came out, a medical researcher for the National Institutes of Health, and this was published, you know, these are the most respected national health agencies there are. The National Institutes of Health, it was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association. They subjected people to two conditions, double-blind experiment, to cell phone radiation, and what they found was that your brain glucose levels were increasing, and that means that somehow the microwave radiation from cell phones is stimulating the brain in a way that is not related to the thermal effect of microwave. It's not to that point where it's actually heating your tissue or burning you, but it is having a biological effect. And the FCC limits are based on this assumption that there are no non-thermal effects. It only takes into account thermal effects, which were put into place and were studied back in the 1950s and 60s, mainly through military applications and studies. So over the last 12 months, not only have the agencies responsible for the public health and welfare come out and, you know, and these are very, very conservative agencies. The World Health Organization is not going to talk about something being a possible carcinogen without there being pretty solid evidence. And the solid evidence in this case comes from cell phone brain tumor studies. And Hardell is a researcher who's done a number of studies, and the evidence is really in. If you look at studies that are not funded by the industry, in other words, independent studies, you will see a significant and relevant connection between brain tumors and cell phone usage. So, and you know, I mean, I 2 years ago, if you asked me, I would have said that this was crazy. You know, I would have probably told you to go away because I was busy on my cell phone conversation, and that it was just really nuts, and you're a tinfoil hat wacko, and you know, I don't have time for you. But over the past year or two, a lot of people come around to understanding the threat of wireless technology. So where does that leave us? So there's the health issue. There's also massive privacy violations, and that's one of the things I want to get across tonight, is that when you're talking about law enforcement being responsible for enforcing a law that our local democratic elected officials put into place, they're not neutral, because the data that's collected from smart metering systems has already led to the arrests of people doing things in the privacy of their own home that they would have never been discovered had it not been for the smart meter recording the details of every single appliance or light switch or grow light or computer network that you turn on in your home. So law enforcement has a vested interest in seeing this system go out there and able to collect private information. Now, I've never met Sheriff Wowak before this evening. I have no reason to believe that he's not a good guy and not in his personal life a man who cares about civil liberties and about privacy in the home. Maybe he could talk a little bit about that. But privacy is a major issue. It's a major reason why the board did what it did. There have also been accuracy issues. People have been massively overcharged. I mean, we're just inundated from all over the country now. We're getting between 1,000 and 2,000 hits a day on our website. We have people from Florida, from Oklahoma, from Georgia, Michigan, writing in saying they put the smart meter in, I'm getting charged $300. My bill has been $100 a month for as long as I can remember. There's also the growing issue of fire safety. These devices are not Underwriters Laboratory certified. The utility claims, well, they don't have to be. But every single other electric device in your house has to be. Why not the actual meter? And why wouldn't they be willing to submit it to UL testing just to show that it was completely safe, because there are doubts? And about 9 months ago, a former worker of Wellington Energy came forward to us and said, look, they're not training people right. They're going out into the fields. They're being pressured by monetary incentives to install a hell of a lot of these things without making sure that they're seated correctly in the socket. And if they're not seated correctly in the socket, there's the potential of an arcing fire where a spark will jump across a gap in the contact and can ignite something. And that may have been what ignited the San Bruno blaze. We'll probably never know for sure. But all we can say for sure is that there had been meter readers walking the streets of San Bruno. They might have smelt gas, and they might have alerted the authorities, and the 8 people who died might have been alive today. And the neighborhood that was destroyed might still be standing. So, on a very fundamental level, it's not a bad idea to have utility staff walking the beat, walking the neighborhood, and just checking that everything's okay. With the wireless system remotely reporting your energy usage to the utility, you don't have that on the ground double that human factor. And of course, this is a big reason why PG&E and the other utilities are rolling the system out, because they can save a lot of money paying meter reader salaries, which are good jobs, by the way, 1,000 of which are being lost in California, at least 1,000 meter readers, and then all the associated support jobs, people who clean the uniforms, who maintain the trucks, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's a bad idea at a time when we're facing a recession and possibly a depression to be getting rid of all these jobs. So there's really a lot of reasons why these things are a bad idea for the public, and quite a nifty way of making a lot of money for the utilities. And Santa Cruz County is not alone. We have seen 46 other local governments throughout the state of California demand a halt to the program. We have seen about 12 other local governments, including a Native American community up in Lake County, pass laws, join Santa Cruz County in passing laws prohibiting the installation. Now, PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission will argue that local governments do not have jurisdiction over utilities, that this is a state-regulated matter. However, in the California Constitution, local governments are given broad discretion and authority to regulate for the safety and welfare and health of the people who live in that county or in that city. And the fact is that a judge has never ruled that the PUC has sole authority over the meter program, or that PG&E can go and enforce this. And the fact is that neither the CPUC or the FCC or Congress has mandated these meters. They have authorized, the PUC has authorized PG&E and the other investor-owned utilities to roll them out, but they have not mandated it. So this whole thing that we're going to come in and everyone's going to get a smart meter, you have no choice, that's utility policy, that's not law. There's two separate things here, and that's what, there's been a great deal of misunderstanding about that. If there's someone on your property, I don't care who they are, unless they're a police or a sheriff with a warrant, you can tell them to get off your property and they have to comply or it's trespassing. That means that regardless of whether there's any opt-out or anything, if you're there and someone's on your property creating a nuisance, and believe me, these things are a nuisance, you have a right to say, get off my property, and they have to leave. And generally they do. That wasn't the case, unfortunately, the other day, last Wednesday, when a man who lives in an apartment building, who is electro-sensitive, came out and asked Wellington to stop installing and to leave, and he refused. This was the same man, the same installer who we heard about 3 weeks before, had a very unpleasant encounter with another resident in the Seabright neighborhood. But what happened was, apparently, according to the resident, and we've included this, we posted it on our website, the Wellington Energy installer shoved him away on the shoulder quite hard, and then when he came back and was filming him with his camera, he reached out and grabbed the camera and smashed it. And you can see a picture of this camera, it's like broken. I mean, he must have really, you know. So this guy called the police, you know, I've been assaulted, my property's been damaged, broken. The police responded and had a long chat with the Wellington installer and discouraged the victim, the resident, from filing a report saying, oh, you know, it'll never go anywhere, and, you know, the Wellington guy's in his rights and you shouldn't file a report, and, you know, go away, basically. And this has happened again and again. Whenever there's been a dispute between local residents and Wellington Energy and PG&E, law enforcement has always come down on the side of the corporation, of PG&E. When we were out there peacefully demonstrating at 38th and Portola at the Wellington yard just down the road, you know, we actually called the sheriff's department and say, look, you know, they're here, they're preparing to roll out and install illegally, violating Ordinance 5084. Please come and take a citizen's arrest. They showed up with about, you know, 6 or 8 sheriff's vehicles, but instead of arresting the Wellington installers, they came and arrested us for peacefully sitting in front of the trucks, and then proceeded to escort the Wellington vehicles out into the community to install illegally. So that if you want to know why we're recalling you, Sheriff Wowak, that is why. Because we can't just stand by silent and quiet while members in our community are telling us they're hurting, are telling us now that when the smart meters are gone in, and they're probably 75% of the way installed in Santa Cruz County, if not more, that since the smart meters went in, they can't go certain places anymore. Their freedom is being restricted. They're having to look at leaving the state. They're having to look at living in their vehicles. They're having to look at living in the forest. These are very, very serious issues. And if we remain silent, if we just say, oh, well, it's the utility and it's the progress and it's what, where's it going to stop? Where's it going to stop? If people are allowed to be forced from their homes, forced out of our community because of pulsing microwave devices that are being forced on our homes, that's pretty Orwellian. It's pretty fascist. And I wake up every morning and I think, God, because I dream about smart meters quite a lot. Unfortunately, it's like I was like rolling around at 5:30 this morning and like thinking about microwatts and milliwatts, and I really just got to take a break. But we can't be silent. We've got to protest. We've got to put ourselves on the line, and that's why we are encouraging others and encouraging the community to organize and get together and take direct action and peaceful civil disobedience. And there's a long history in our society of where the harm to the community of a certain policy is so overt and so obvious, and yet the policy and the laws, well, in this case the laws are consistent with it, we're just not getting enforcement. But society as a whole has yet to sort of embrace this idea that wireless can be harmful. And when there's that differential between the reality and the perception, or the reality and the policy, there's a tension. And it's possible that black people would not have the right to, that there would still be segregation if people had not broken the law, and that there would still be slavery if people had not broken the law, and women would not have the right to vote if people had not broken the law. And in some case, and this is a threat to the system, because if you commit acts of civil disobedience based on your morality, what it's saying is there's a higher law that exists, and that the state does not have a monopoly on what is right and wrong. That often the state gets it quite wrong because of corruption or for whatever reason. And civil disobedience, people standing up for what they believe in, is an embarrassment, because it's a statement that the policies and the laws of the state are not protecting people, and they're not doing what they should be doing. So the other day I live in Scotts Valley, and just off of Granite Creek Road, and we've been talking to our neighbors, and a lot of people are very alarmed about this, and together we've established a smart meter free zone, put up signs, and a lot of signs went up on telephone poles, and the council hassled us about it, threatened us with some injunctions. So in response, a lot of the neighborhood put these signs up in their front yards. And we've been watching our neighborhood, we've been patrolling it, and the other day I was out on my bike and came across a Wellington Energy truck installing smart meters in our neighborhood, in the smart meter free zone. So we have the county who's passed a law against these things. We have the city of Scotts Valley who's demanded a halt and joined petitions at the PUC demanding a halt. We have the neighborhood saying we don't want these things, and yet Wellington is installing. This was last week. And I politely came up to the guy, and he rolled down his window. Actually, I think he rolled up his window. And drove away, and it was a cul-de-sac, so we had to turn around. And I rode my bike up, and then I stood in the road, and I blocked him. And, okay, yeah, that's breaking the law. I was obstructing traffic. But this guy was installing meters that are hurting people, and that's violent. And what I did is nonviolent, and there's a big difference there. But, so the guy gets on his cell phone, and he calls the police. And I'm standing there with my bike, and about 20 minutes pass, and a couple neighbors come up, see what's happening. I explain to them, and they're like, oh, wow, that's, I didn't even know they were installing. I thought the county had passed the law. Isn't someone enforcing it? And I had to explain the whole thing to them, and there's a recall effort, and you need to lock up your meter if you really don't want one of these smart meters. And 20 minutes later, the police showed up and had a long chat with the installer, and chatted with me and said, look, you're liable to be arrested if you continue to stand in front of the truck. You're obstructing traffic. I think he said you're kidnapping, or you're holding him, you're imprisoning him. Like the vehicle has become the man, and the man has become the vehicle, or something. But anyway, at that point, a neighbor comes up, and he says, yeah, this guy came to my house a couple hours before, and I told him to get off my property. I don't want one of these things. I think that they're hazardous. I think that they're lethal. I think that they're dangerous. And I totally support what this guy's doing. And at that point, you know, he was wearing shorts, and he rolled up his shorts, and there's a tumor on his leg the size of an orange. And he's like, I used to work for a tech company. I kept my cell phone in my back pocket, right where the tumor was, for 10 years. And he had another tumor on his ear, on the same side that he talked on. And I looked at the cop, I'm like, we're not making this up. You know, this is really serious. This is affecting people. Wireless technology is hurting people. And, you know, the police officer really looked taken aback. I mean, I think he probably thought that we were just, you know, some hippies worried about something, you know, and they have a right to install it authorized by the PUC and whatnot. But he looked really, he didn't know what to say. He was really speechless for a minute. And I went back yesterday to interview this neighbor of mine who didn't want to appear on camera, but I got an audio interview with him, and I got a picture of his tumor. And he wants people to know that this is real, that this is a threat. And he doesn't have health insurance. And he hasn't even been to the doctor to check this out. And so he's looking at having to go with his wife to Indonesia to get health coverage. And so this is like what this country's coming to. We can't take care of our own when we get sick. We're not passing laws to protect them from getting sick in the first place. And in fact, we're going in the exact opposite direction of what we need to be, the direction we need to be going, which is to rewire our communication systems, to rewire our Wi-Fi, is to you know, really limit the use of cell phones, and to dial down the limits that the FCC sets for safe human exposure to microwave radiation. And instead, we're putting out pulsing, high-level microwave emitting devices on everyone's home. And as a result of that, there have been thousands. I think it's probably up in 5,000 or 6,000. We don't know. We haven't got the latest number. But when we did a Freedom of Information Act request to the PUC, this was in, I think it was January or February, there were about 2,000 or 3,000 health complaints to the PUC from all over California, areas where smart meters have been installed, headaches, nausea, dizziness, insomnia, ringing in the ears, the same symptoms, consistent with the peer-reviewed studies that have documented health effects near cell towers and other microwave radiation sources. And yet, the PUC says, oh, people are just making it up. People are just psychosomatic. You know, they claim that there's health effects. So clearly there's something going on here, and the longer that time goes on, the more untenable the position of the utilities and of the Public Utilities Commission and of the legislature who's covering for them and law enforcement who's failing to enforce this ordinance that should be a priority. Because obviously there's a lot of needs in the community for the police to keep us safe, the police and the sheriff to do their job. There's a lot of demand on officers' time. But the priority should be on protecting our safety, on protecting the public health and safety. And what we said at the press conference when we announced our intention to initiate this recall was that microwave radiation might be invisible. You might not be able to taste it or smell it or see it or touch it, but it is just as harmful, if not more so. It's more insidious than a gun, than violence from a gun or a knife or a fist. And we tried multiple times to meet with our sheriff to explain this, because we don't blame him, and most of society doesn't understand that it's dangerous. But we wanted to sit down, we wanted to bring some people, some electro-sensitive people, some people who've been suffering from this, and meet with him and talk about science and really let him know that we need him to enforce the law for our safety. And we're still willing to have that debate and have that discussion and have that open dialogue and to introduce you to people who are hurting and encourage you to change your mind and see this as a priority to protect the community, even at this 11th hour when most of the meters have been installed. So, yeah, and the other thing about this is that, a Wellington Energy installer who was installing illegally the other day when he assaulted this Santa Cruz resident, that wasn't in the Sentinel. That wasn't covered by the Santa Cruz Sentinel. It wasn't covered by the TV news stations. It was on indie media. It was covered on our website. It was covered on Free Radio Santa Cruz and on KSCO. We certainly...
It's going to be in the good times.
It's going to be in the good times. Thank you for the good times. Yeah. And, you know, it's just, it's like, why? You know, this is relevant. This is newsworthy. You know, if you want, interview the Wellington installers, get his side of the story, get the resident. But, like, you know, people need to know about this. You know, law enforcement just hasn't done its job, and unfortunately that's just typically and historically the way it is that law enforcement tends to side with the corporations and the powers that be and the wealth against the popular interest and the interest of the public being healthy and safe. And we're not saying that that can't change. We would certainly welcome that. But it just doesn't ring true when, you know, you say you don't have the resources to enforce the law, enforce Ordinance 5084, when a handful of peaceful protesters down at 38th and Portola warrants a dozen patrol cars and like riot police showing up. You know, sitting in front of a truck is not endangering anyone's health or safety. It might be inconveniencing a corporation. It might be costing them money even. But it's not hurting anyone. It's shutting down their operations, which we should shut down their operations.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, who wants to show up tomorrow morning at the Wellington yard and shut down their operations? Marilyn Garrett's up. Maryland's down. But yeah, this is really what needs to happen, and it just doesn't ring true when there's such a police response for such a small number or even a large number of peaceful protesters protesting, you know, what is essentially an illegal act. And that is why we're recalling the sheriff, and that is why we're asking every one of you in here to volunteer to collect signatures, even if it's just taking 1 or 2 sheets and getting your friends and family to sign. I would like nothing better than if to have a dialogue with Sheriff Wowak and have him, you know, come up here and say, wow, like I didn't realize that stuff. I didn't quite get that, and that would be honest, and that would be welcomed. And I think if we started seeing enforcement, we probably wouldn't be so keen on a recall. It probably wouldn't seem quite so urgent or necessary, and it wouldn't seem necessary to put our resources behind that. But because we don't have law enforcement on the side of the public, who have overwhelmingly opposed these things, by the way, in every poll, in every there's just been a massive uprising that's growing by the day, not only in California but across the country, against this meter program. And you know, there are people that are saying it's intentional, the harm that's being done. They're saying there's whispers growing louder that it's a matter of population control. There's whispers growing louder that older people are dying off after these meters are installed. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not gonna stand here and say that that's definitely happening. I don't know. I haven't seen the evidence. I'm certainly not going to rule it out. But what I can say right now is that the harm caused and inflicted by the smart meter program right now is intentional. It might not have started out that way, but there is compelling enough evidence that people are being harmed by this program, and that they've had ample opportunity to call it off, but they haven't done so, and that makes it intentional. And so I think we've got to, if we don't have the sheriff on our side, we can't wait 4.5 months or whatever it is to collect the signatures to recall the sheriff, to have a new sheriff in, because by then all the smart meters are going to be in. You know, we're looking at having to defend our communities ourselves. And that's not something Americans or the Western world at all is used to. You know, we've grown complacent. We assume that our military is going to protect us from any enemies, or that the FBI is going to protect us from terrorists. We're not used to the idea of organizing with our neighbors to protect ourselves against corporations. It certainly has happened, and it continues to happen. But we have trust, misplaced or not, that the powers that be have our best interests at heart, or at least wouldn't do something that is so egregiously damaging to us. But I think that given the facts and given the ongoing installations and given the ongoing reports of people being harmed, if we want to protect our communities and we don't want to get cancer and we don't want to see our pets harmed and we don't want to see the plants in our yards die and we don't want to see the people who we love die an early death, we are obligated to organize, even if it's just your neighbor and you, having a compact saying we're going to look out for each other, we're going to look out if Wellington comes, we're going to be aware. I mean, I have this button on, which are anti-smart meter button, and I was at a store earlier, and they said, oh yeah, I got my smart meter the other day, and we started talking, and I started telling them about it, and they're like, yeah, it's funny, since it got installed, I've been getting these headaches, and I'm like, the ones right here in your temple, and they're like, yeah, how did you know? So our suspicion is that a lot of people are suffering from the radiation, but may not be connecting it. They might just be like, oh, pop a couple ibuprofen and a couple of sleeping pills and forget about it. But it is happening, and it is real. We're not crazy. We're not tinfoil hat loonies, although I could use a tinfoil hat. And I would actually just like a show of hands of how many people have been feeling effects from these meters since they went in, just in the room here. So maybe about between 10 and 20% in the room. So, and the thing is, as people get more exposed to these things, they're becoming more sensitive. And what's interesting, and I'll just leave you with this, with a thought, and that there are these new studies that are coming out that show that pulsed microwave radiation is more damaging and induces more of a biological effect than constant microwave radiation, like you'll see from a Wi-Fi or a cell phone. That pulsed radiation causes more of an effect. And this is in peer-reviewed scientific studies. You'll see this. You can read this. So the question is why, surely they know about this stuff. They've read the studies. Why would they be putting these devices that put out pulse microwave radiation when all the scientific studies are indicating that this is dangerous and produces an effect? I'm just asking the question. But anyway, I've probably talked long enough, and I think people are really interested to hear what our sheriff has to say. Do we want to take questions together? And okay, I think I just wanted to say that we really do need people mobilizing, gathering signatures. We have forms tonight. Michael Boyd he's a resident of SoCal, and he's been instrumental in helping to facilitate this recall effort. And if you are interested in gathering signatures, we have forms here you can pick up. You have to be a registered voter in Santa Cruz County in order to qualify. And if you want to contact Dondi, raise your hand. Talk to Dondi to not only to get the forms, but also to return the forms once they've been filled in. And we just want to make sure that they're all registered voters that we're getting, so we have high quality return. And the opportunity here is to really use this recall effort as a means to educate the public about the issue. Oh yeah, the smart meter, I got one in my house. Well, did you know, the World Health Organization, that they're 100 times stronger than cell phones? Did you know that they're damaging? You have a right to get this thing taken off your house if it's hurting you. You don't have to suffer needlessly in your home or be kicked out of your home. You can get it removed. So yeah, it's a really great opportunity to reach out to the public, to get more people mobilized, and we can stop this thing. Even if they get Santa Cruz County 100% installed, there's no reason why we shouldn't have a mass movement building to not only get rid of the smart meters and to reduce the exposure to wireless technology in our county, but to get the county and our cities to go forward with a public power plan and reject the monopoly utility industry as a whole and get renewable, affordable energy that serves the public, because PG&E and the utilities are out of control. And this is just the latest episode. And basically, it's going to be like, how bad does it need to get before it gets to that level where we need to kick them out and generate our own power in a safe way that serves the public? Anyway, I'll leave it there, and I think we'll take questions. I'll hand it back over to Ellie.
Thank you, Josh. So the next period here, we're actually having an opportunity for a question and answer period with Joshua Hart and Sheriff Phil Wowak. I'd like to invite Sheriff Phil Wowak to come on up.
Boy, can that guy speak. Not only is he passionate, but he's very educated and very articulate. This is the first time Josh and I have ever been able to get together. He's absolutely right. His group has tried to engage my office, and I've been unable to sit with them. What Josh has told you about the ordinance with the Board of Supervisors is correct. Your county Board of Supervisors enacted a moratorium for the installation of PG&E smart meters in the county of Santa Cruz in response to their constituents, you. Unfortunately, the ordinance and the moratorium that the Board of Supervisors has enacted is the lowest level of legal recourse in the state of California, and it does not have jurisdiction over the California Public Utilities Commission, which is why I've directed my staff not to enforce the ordinance on PG&E installers, but to keep the peace. To keep the peace, okay? When a PG&E installer or a Wellington installer is on a property and they are asked to leave, they must do so. And if they refuse to do so and law enforcement is called, we will escort that person off the property at the direction of the property owner, okay? At this point, we do not allow the blockade or the public access of anyone in public who is demonstrating, even peacefully, against installers. It would be very similar to if a group were to come here today and to stand outside the doors of the Grange Hall and to try and block you all from coming in here and having a public meeting. If you were to call us, we would come and we would arrest those folks for blocking your rights. And that is what we do when we're called to a public demonstration. Our role is to keep the peace. Now, I can't debate science. I'm not a rocket scientist. Everything that Josh says has great passion and great science to back it up. But that's not my role. That's not what I was elected for, and that's not what I do in law enforcement. I wrote a couple of quick notes so that I wanted you to know that I was actually paying attention and that I really do feel and understand your cause. I really do. I wish there was something more that I could do for you, but unfortunately we're probably going to have to agree to disagree. I can't use law enforcement resources to give a criminal record to an employee doing the job at the direction of their supervisor that is authorized by a state commission. Okay? That would be a very great waste of not only the criminal justice system and the legal system and the office of the district attorney and the superior court, but it would also jeopardize the criminal record and the personal integrity of the person that gets arrested for doing their job. Okay? So that's one of the reasons that I've chosen not to enforce the ordinance. The other is because the ordinance does not have and does not trump the Public Utilities Commission.
It's inaccurate.
Now, I understand your recall effort, and you have every right to do so, and you've done it very, very professionally. Okay, and I issued my 200-word response to the recall effort. I encourage you to use the recall effort in every way possible to get notoriety to your cause. But I do want you to know that the recall effort, in my opinion, okay, is a use of your resources that could be directed in a way to achieve your end and to get victory. If you were to use the combined effort that you have to run this recall and get this issue before a civil court judge, where it belongs. It doesn't belong in criminal court. This issue does not belong in making individual citizens of our county documented criminals. This issue belongs in front of a judge in a robe in civil court where he decides whether or not PG&E and the Public Utilities Commission has the right to do what they're doing in Santa Cruz County. Plain and simple, that's why I've chosen to act the way I have. Now again, I have to say, I'm probably not going to please you all, and I completely understand that. And that's why we live here. That's why we love Santa Cruz, that's why we live in America. We have that right. So having said that, I'd be happy to stand here with Josh and take any questions that you have. Again, I don't want to debate the science. I do want you to understand the resources that we have at the Sheriff's Office and what we intend on doing, and our mission is to keep the peace. I don't want any kind of passionate debate like this to become violent, and that's my role. Thank you. Mr. Boyd.
There were 3 other issues on the recall petition besides the smart meter issue. The first being the diversion of property tax revenues from schools to redevelopment debt for $44 million sheriff's station, which after financing is going to be roughly $88 million once it's fully paid off. That was one of the issues, is that your support of monies going to redevelopment instead of schools, which is what the property tax was intended for. The other issue had to do with the escaped convict, that you apparently understaffed with one female officer to watch, and then the lady that disappeared into the backwoods in, I think it was December, that was missing for like 6 days, and her family had to go out there, and our neighbors had to go find her, and your office said they didn't have sufficient resources to even mount a search party. Could you address those other 3 issues, please?
Absolutely. So did everybody hear the question or what Mr. Boyd said? The recall petition that you will be asked to sign has essentially three specific reasons that they want to put my off for. 4 incidents, separate incidents that they want to put me on the ballot to be recalled. The first is the non-enforcement of the smart meter issue. The second is the redevelopment agency, or the abolishment of redevelopment agencies by the governor earlier this year, and how Santa Cruz County voted to expend the remaining funds left in a redevelopment agency. When I took office in 2009, I immediately started a campaign on improvement of the Sheriff's Office to better serve you and all of Santa Cruz County. My goal was to move the Sheriff's Office from where it is now in the city of Santa Cruz, deep in the heart of city of Santa Cruz, where they have their own police department, and move it to Live Oak, where I have now purchased property down the road from here, and bring police services more accessible to all of the county of Santa Cruz. I lobbied very hard and worked with the Board of Supervisors and went to public meetings, a number of them that were held here in Live Oak, to try and find out what would be the best possible expenditure of redevelopment agency funds. In every one of the public meetings that I attended, and in the final count of the public meetings in SoCal and in Live Oak, public safety and the relocation of the Sheriff's Office was in the top 3 for the community. I took that information to the Board of Supervisors, who at the time in their body was the governing board of the redevelopment agency. I asked the Board of Supervisors to make the relocation of Sheriff's headquarters and build a Center for Public Safety as one of their #1 priorities with the redevelopment agency. Before the governor proposed to abolish redevelopment agencies in the state of California, the Board of Supervisors had awarded me a $60 million project to find property, to build a new Center for Public Safety, including a crime laboratory, a new sheriff's office, a community room that would be double this size that would be available for anybody in the county of Santa Cruz, and to consolidate all of our resources. I don't want to take up all of your time in the justification for this, but there was significant justification, and in January the board voted to give me $60 million to do that, to move the sheriff's office out here to Live Oak. Subsequent to that, the state of California had a little bit of a financial crisis. In balancing the checkbook, the state of California changed the law and abolished redevelopment agencies as we knew them then. They still continue to exist in some form, but as we knew them then, they ceased to exist. So the money that I was given, or that I had been promised to build a new sheriff's facility, had been reduced from $60 million to $44 million. However, the Board of Supervisors voted to give $44 million to my office to move all and consolidate all of our resources. And again, it's right down the street here on Shannon Creek. So I didn't balk 1 second. We immediately took and started looking for what we could do with that $16 million reduction from our original plan. And we engaged in a conversation with the property owner down the street, and we are in the process of purchasing, relocating tenants, and remodeling the Live Oak Business Park, or 3 buildings in the 4 buildings of the Live Oak Business Park, so that a complete Center for Public Safety will be right in the heart of Santa Cruz County. Live Oak and Soquel make up almost 35% of the population of Santa Cruz County. And it seems ludicrous for us to have your sheriff's office, the public safety providers, deep in the city of Santa Cruz. So that's why I asked to move that to this location. Now that's the second item on the list. The other 2 are 2 specific incidents that occurred a year ago. The first being an inmate that had escaped. We had an inmate in custody in Santa Cruz County Jail who had been, as we come to find out now, feigning an injury over months of time. He had seen a doctor, seen a second doctor, seen a third doctor, all while waiting to go to trial. And eventually he was given a doctor's appointment to go to Dominican Hospital for an MRI, for a scan, for an injury that he had in his shoulder. Now at the time, our policy and procedure was to have a deputy, an armed deputy, escort every prisoner to doctor's appointments, go to that doctor appointment, and then return that prisoner to county jail. On this particular day, the day that this gentleman escaped, the deputy that was assigned to do this transport was a woman. Now, I've been chastised for assigning a woman to go and supervise a man. And I can tell you right now, I cannot discriminate male, female, height, weight, anything with regard to whether or not a person can do their job. Every deputy sheriff that works for me is qualified, competent, and able to do their job. And I said publicly at the time of this escape, I think the deputy who fought this man and tried to keep him into custody did a better job than I could have, than I would have, physically. She's a phenomenal athlete, a triathlete. Unfortunately, she's probably been disabled and will not be able to return to full duty ever because of this incident. That was the third item that was on the recall and that I'm being blamed for. The fourth was, as Mr. Boyd said, was a woman who was lost in Felton. She left her home around Thanksgiving, and her family told us 3 or 4 days into her disappearance that she likes to go to these 4 specific county parks. Now, she lived in Felton, and they told us she normally goes to Henry Cowell, Fall Creek State Park, but she likes Nicene Marks, and she likes Big Basin. We did a hasty search of those parks with the State Parks Department, and we did the searches that we thought would be fruitful. But it was very similar, in my opinion, at the time, of closing your eyes and throwing a dart at the wall to figure out where she would have been. And so we never, and it was never that we didn't have the resources to do it, it was that we never mobilized all of our resources to any specific area because she was missing somewhere else in the world other than her front porch. Fortunately for her, not for me and not for anybody else in the county, but fortunately for her, 2 people found her on the 5th or 6th day that she was in the forest. Okay? And she essentially walked up to the rescuers, kind of collapsed, and was carried out of there. Spent a few days in the hospital for hypothermia and a little bit of malnutrition, but she's safe and fine today. Again, part of the recall effort is that I inappropriately mishandled that incident. And for the last 2, I have to tell you, I cannot go back in time and change what happened. We did change some of the practices for the things that we do. We do now do medical transports with 2 deputy sheriffs. That costs you and it costs me, but we do it for the safety of the community. And at the time, we thought we were doing the best possible thing we could. Mr. Owen.
Yes, this last week the county got what brings up to $6.5 million towards Homeland Security. And we see a lot of meshing of law enforcement, joint councils for the judiciary and so forth. And we're concerned about making the police local and not becoming nationalized police or letting the feds set the policy here. Is there some resistance among the local police chiefs and entities to remain local and defend their sovereignty?
I believe the Homeland Security funds that you're talking about were the grant funds that came locally to the different police departments for different infrastructure upgrades. And I was a recipient over the last 3 years of thousands of dollars of Homeland Security grants. So I can't answer the second half of your question, is there a unified effort to keep the federal government out and to stay localized? Because no, we cooperate very well with the federal government. We do receive Homeland Security grants for infrastructure upgrades. The federal government, a number of years back, almost 10 years ago, mandated that there be a consolidation of radio equipment and a narrow banding, if you will, of all radio systems that are in place today across the United States. Whether it's for a garbage company, a police agency, a news agency, anyone. They had to do a narrow banding and upgrade of their radio infrastructure. In Santa Cruz County, that was initially estimated to be over $21 million. We didn't have the money in Santa Cruz County to do it. So we applied for Homeland Security grants, and I've been the recipient of a number of grants, and I've been able to, through grants with the federal government, accomplish all of those upgrades without using one tax dollar. So that's what that money has gone to. Yes, sir.
Smart meter issue. As far as arresting individual Wellington installers, I can understand some of the theory there, but what about the actual installation yard, which is located right in the heart of Santa Cruz County, which is your jurisdiction? So not arresting any individual, just shutting the yard down and just saying this is against our ordinance and we don't approve you actually installing and operating out of our county.
So the question was, why don't I go in to the yard at Portola and shut down the business that's there and stop them?
Yeah.
And as I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to have to agree to disagree on this, but the Board of Supervisors Ordinance 5084 does not trump the California Public Utilities Commission, and that yard has every right to operate as if Starbucks does that's down the street. And I cannot go in and capture a business and stop them from doing so.
They are installing
You have a follow-up? Hang on, he has a follow-up.
You swore an oath to the Constitution. Oh, shut up.
Sorry.
Use your hand.
Okay.
Let's recall this bureaucrat.
That's not helping.
Okay, one at a time.
Out of here.
Yes.
And what, this is what's confusing for us as citizens. At what point, what would they have to do for, right now it just sounds, I can't think of a better word, but this impotent. But just, at what point does the sheriff step in and say, hey, you guys are crossing a line? Where does that, where do you draw the line as sheriff personally? Are you offended that they're actually just trampling our laws and?
Ask you not to recall me, okay? I'm just telling you.
We want to know the tools. We want to know the tools.
Actually, Mr. Boyd, I think you're right.
But we want to know what the tools are and what the framework is from all different perspectives. Because I'm guessing, I've talked to a number of sheriffs on the phone and such, or sheriff deputies, I don't know, sorry, I don't know the title. But they're, I mean, sort of off the record, they said, yeah, we don't agree with this, and we're not proud that this is actually happening in our community. So if you can share with us what those tools would be and how to go about doing that, so you can do your job, please
I'm
let us know.
absolutely certain that Josh and Mr. Boyd both know how to get this incident or this issue into civil court. The County Board of Supervisors has joined a number of different entities in a pro per legal action in civil court to do just that. The reason the County Board of Supervisors did that, in my opinion, is because they know that 5084 is not enforceable and will not become a criminal action against PG&E or Wellington. And they have joined this pro per. Pro per means that it's a free legal action on behalf of the County of Santa Cruz, and they've joined with Marin, who else?
City of Fairfax,
Ross.
some private individuals. But that's my question is, okay, one of the gentlemen in the back, maybe he spoke out of turn. He raised the issue of when you were elected, you signed the oath to uphold the Constitution. Constitution includes certain amendments like free speech, like the right against illegal search and seizure, the right to not have your property trespassed on or taken without just compensation. These are part of the state, both the state and the federal Constitution.
Correct.
But as federal law, those are our civil rights under federal law that all of us have. Now, when a Wellington worker comes on my property and puts a device that I don't approve, which there's a county ordinance against, and what they're doing is they're violating a federal law under color of state law in violation of a county ordinance.
And like I said, if you don't want that, call us. We will move them off your property.
They're creating a personal liability. And I am already doing this kind of suit against the PUC where I'm naming them individually for violating my civil rights under color of law, and I'm suing them individually for damages that they caused me. Now, any person here who has a smart meter put on their property in this county, who under that ordinance has those same rights, and they can name me, or they can name PG&E, or they can name you if you don't do your job, okay?
Correct.
And so the point is, don't suggest that going to court isn't being considered. It is being considered,
Okay.
but what short term for us is a lot better is if you just enforce the ordinances that are on the books. If that means citing the Wellington yard, saying they can't operate this business within this jurisdiction because you're violating people's constitutional rights under color of state law in violation of a county ordinance. I believe that you should have the authority as law enforcement to enforce the federal Constitution that you swore to uphold when you were elected to office. And so that's what I think we're asking you, is why you can't uphold that constitutional oath that you made when you were elected. If you can't, then we have no choice but to recall.
And that's, like I said, it sounds like very ironic that I would be saying I'm not encouraging you not to recall me. Of course I don't want to lose my job. Absolutely. I'm telling you that I believe that collectively you can use the power and energy that you're using in the recall toward your end in a different and more successful manner. We did not answer your question, and I'm going to take the woman's question there. Yes, absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt here. There are a lot of people who have questions, so I see I'm going to have to work a little harder tonight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start calling on people, and if you could just keep your questions very brief, because I want to keep everybody here this evening instead of running out of time and having to go before we're over. So I'm going to start calling on people. If you could address your question to either Sheriff Wowak or to Joshua Hart, specify, or if it's to both, that would be great. And I think we're going to start with the gentleman. Josh would like to reply briefly, and then the next gentleman is a gentleman in the back, Michael.
Just really quickly, I certainly appreciate Sheriff Wowak being here and offering his opinion, his take on things. I just wanted to reply to a few things he said. The first thing is that our sheriff is really the last line of defense, and he has a broad degree of discretion over what laws to enforce and what laws not to. The statement he made that he does not have the ability, or that the CPUC trumps local law, that is a judicial decision. He is putting himself in the position of a judge by saying that this PUC trumps local law. There are statutes and utility code sections that I could point to that would make the case very strongly that the PUC does not overrule local jurisdiction. So the Board of Supervisors in Santa Cruz County passed Ordinance 5084 not as some message to PG&E, hoping that they will follow it. They passed a law to be enforced. And Dana McCrae, the county council, sent a letter to Wellington and PG&E reflecting that intention of the board. Now, Watsonville police have cited PG&E, Wellington, for installing on the Register Pajaronian building. Fairfax police stand ready in the county of Marin to go out and ticket installers. I don't think anyone, thinks it's ideal to go and arrest these guys, a lot of whom are just trying to put food on the table for their families. But like at $50 an hour, which is what they're getting, they could probably afford to pay the fine anyway. Who you really should be arresting are the PG&E executives at 77 Beale Street. Maybe you could go out there and arrest them. But the bottom line is the judge has not ruled on this, and you are within your right, as other law enforcement officials have chosen to do in the state, to enforce this law, and you're not doing it. And that's the bottom line. This recall effort is not a distraction. It's an opportunity to reach out to the public. It's an opportunity to hold our law enforcement officials to account. It's not like we haven't looked into the legal route. We continue to consult with our legal team, with other lawyers from around the state. And the bottom line is, if we were to go to civil court and try and get an injunction, PG&E would be in there with their high-powered lawyers, and they'd be arguing that, this is CPUC jurisdiction, and interrupting our installation efforts could cost us $1 million, and they have to post a bond. We would have to raise $1 million potentially to cover the costs of PG&E's losses in case the injunction were ultimately unsuccessful. I don't have $1 million. Do any of you? If you do, let's go. Let's do it. But this is the monetary financial bias of the legal system. And that is why our elected officials, like the sheriff, we need to hold you accountable. We need you to serve us and to serve and protect. And that is the... So, one more thing, and then we'll take some questions, is that there's been speculation that, and I think, it's a strong word, but, your impotence in failing to enforce this law is a result of political influence from above. And I've heard that from a number of quarters. And I'd just like to ask, has anyone from up top, whatever, called you and said, look, this is the smart meter thing, it's really important, we need it, just lay low on this one? Because that is the word on the street. That is the word on the street.
Josh, I couldn't be further from the truth. The folks that are up top are the Board of Supervisors who control my budget. I don't work for the Board of Supervisors. I'm independently elected like the Board of Supervisors, but they decide what money goes where in the county of Santa Cruz, and that would be the most influential folk. I have had no conversation with anyone with regard to this, and I stand by the reasons that I haven't enforced the ordinance.
Take some questions.
Sheriff Wowak, since you're our elected sheriff, and historically the sheriffs are the supreme legal authority in the county, why are you not enforcing the stoppage of these meters being installed? Because they're not UL approved. What's going to happen if one of these meters goes sideways and starts a fire in the middle of the night and a bunch of little kids burn to death? They're not UL approved. That's against California state law. Where are we at there? Are we going to wait until people die? I can't go out and install any kind of electrical device I want that's not UL approved on a house. How come they're getting away with it?
The sheriff is the elected and head law enforcement officer of the county. You're absolutely right.
You have jurisdiction over the feds.
I do not have jurisdiction over the feds.
Yes, you do.
I have the duty, and I'm sworn to cooperate. I'm sworn to cooperate with them and to uphold the California state and federal constitution. I am not enforcing that ordinance because I do not have jurisdiction over it, as I told you, and I do not have the resources, and it is the inappropriate use of the criminal justice system.
Michael?
Who told you that?
Yeah, first of all, my name's Michael. And first of all, I'd like to thank Sheriff Wowak for being here to answer our questions. My question is, many of us have put up cages around the smart meter, which are not a fire danger, but will keep the installers out. If they come in and break in to our property to take the meter, is that against the law?
We will take that action, report it for you, and get it into the district attorney's office for review. I can't answer it, just like Josh says, I cannot make a judicial decision on it. Okay,
Also,
but you do have the right to opt out. That is a very, very appropriate and very effective way to opt out of having a meter installed.
The other thing is, I understand preemptive legislation, where there are certain laws that prevent lower laws from being enforced, and I think what you're talking about is preemptive legislation, is that correct?
Not only preemptive legislation, but I believe in the reverse. I believe that the Board of Supervisors is doing just that. They're sending a message to your legislators that it is time for them to act at the state level and to give them the authority to do so. Okay, and that's what I believe is happening here. And I cannot use my budget and my resources to further that cause. I am the executive branch of government, not the legislative branch of government, and not the judicial branch of government. And it would be inappropriate to act in the other two venues. Thank you.
Lady in the black sweater.
Thank you. My question is harkening way back to the beginning of the sheriff's speech. You mentioned that your officers would escort an installer from the property under the property owner's direction. What about renters?
Renters don't have the jurisdiction, and no, we couldn't do that. It would have to be from the property owner. That's been tested already, and as Josh mentioned in his opening remarks, that was a very horrific incident that occurred just recently. A tenant in a apartment complex wanted to opt out with the meter installer. It was in the city of Santa Cruz. And the decision has been brought to law enforcement that that is the property owner's right, the landlord, not the tenant.
Right. And the second part of my question, I believe that same resident had a piece of private property broken at the time of that same incident. The installer broke the camera. So is that considered against the law?
I don't know the circumstances. It happened in the city of Santa Cruz. My deputies didn't respond to it, so I don't know. In the context of what you're telling, if I were to reach out and to break the pen that's in your lap, absolutely, that's a violation.
So just to clarify, if you were a renter and I came onto your property and had a big party and I was drinking a lot of beer and making a lot of noise and kicking your cat or something, if you called the sheriff, then the renter would have no rights to kick that person off your property? Because that's what we're talking about here, nuisance.
Actually, we're talking about apples and oranges.
We're
talking about, I understand.
Trespassing.
I understand. But to create a disturbance or to do something assaultive as you're talking about, yes. But to go and to do a utility work at the direction of if the landlord opts out, if you're a tenant and you get your landlord to opt out, then absolutely you can represent that landlord's wishes. Okay.
I don't know. This is important because this is ultimately trespassing law. And my understanding of trespassing law is it doesn't matter why you don't want a person on your property. You may not just like them. But if you want them off your property, you tell them they gotta get off, and if they don't, then they're trespassing. I don't care whether they're PG&E or there's some random guy on the street. And whether you're a renter or whether you own your home, you have the same rights. And in this case, what happened last week, this man was assaulted. His property was destroyed. He asked the installer to leave and he refused. This guy was trespassing, assaulting, and damaging property. And this wasn't under your jurisdiction. This was Santa Cruz City Police Department. But they did not respond in a way that protected this guy's rights. And that's what we're seeing. And that is why people are so angry.
You're aware that the FCC is jurisdictional for radio transmitters in Santa Cruz. There's only one licensed radio station that I know of, and that's KSCO. We're allowing people to install radio transmitters on private property without their knowing about it?
The FCC has control over all radio transmitters, including the ones at my office, the ambulance, the fire trucks everybody uses. And you know, I can tell you that there's over 24 radio transmitter stations that my office utilizes in the county.
Ones that are authorized by the FCC.
Correct.
Okay, these are radio transmitters that are not authorized. The smart meters.
What, the smart meters? Again, I said I can't debate the science. That's not my field.
It's not science. It's just really simple. Is it a UL approval?
Well, I just like, you know, first of all, the FCC authorization form for the meters that are being installed in Santa Cruz County, what they say is that no person, well, they say three things. No person shall get within 20 centimeters of these meters. And you see, you know, kids could be sitting on them, playing around them. There's no warning. PG&E has pictures of people with their hands on the meters on their website. The meters must not be co-located, meaning they must be placed adjacent to one another. So these banks of 100 meters on apartment buildings are totally violating FCC regulations, and that they must be professionally installed. And these Wellington guys, even though they're getting paid professionally, they are not professional. They get 20 hours of training. They are temporary workers. They are not qualified to do this work. So 3 violations of the FCC authorization form, and not the sheriff, not the state, not the feds. No one is making sure that PG&E or the utilities are following the law, because they're all working together.
So couldn't you just simply contact the FCC to help you enforce the ordinance?
You know, to follow up on what Josh asked me to do when I was sitting back in the back corner here, absolutely, I'm going to sit down with him in the very near future. I'm hoping that County Council will sit with the 2 of us and that we can meet out some of these issues. The issues that you're bringing up to me are very new to me tonight. The fact that the FCC has jurisdiction over a transmitting device. Again? Okay, and I appreciate that, and that's the purpose of me showing up here. I will take that with Josh, and hopefully County Council will put that into the lawsuit that the county has adjoined to on your behalf.
Do you know that all of the data that these smart meters provide to PG&E is going into permanent databases and constitutes a Fourth Amendment violation, and that they're installing these without getting people's consent for this violation? Do you understand the Fourth Amendment violation that constitutes?
I understand your argument that it could be a Fourth Amendment violation, and I wouldn't be the person, again, not the judicial branch of government, wouldn't be the person that would decide that. I appreciate you bringing that up, though, because Josh mentioned in his opening hour that part of the worry that you have about the transmission and the surveillance of the PG&E smart meters is that law enforcement will use that information. And I can tell you that that is not wholly true. Do we use PG&E information in some types of investigations? Absolutely. But we cannot get it without a court order that contains probable cause to get it. And we must demonstrate that to a judge and then hand that court order to PG&E to get that information. And that will not change whether you have an analog meter or a smart meter. And so that's the part of the data piece that applies to law enforcement.
Excuse me, don't you understand that the right to use surveillance against people in the interest of national security that was provided by the federal government has been almost exclusively used against criminals by the government? Almost exclusively.
What's your question?
So you're telling me that because the law says that you can't use it without a court order, that is actually going to be the case?
Well, that is the case today, and that's the case in my 28 years of law
But
enforcement.
that's not what's really going on. And this is pervading the entire society, and it's coming down, and you're saying you're cooperating with the federal government, and you're quite happy to do that.
Well, I can tell you that my office, under no instances, does any surveillance like that without proper court order, and that's what you've elected me to do. And I know that in Santa Cruz County that does not occur, sir.
I'd like to just thank Joshua for bringing this to his attention. I can say, having worked in the solar industry and having worked for one of the major corporations to bring that metering to the market, that it really truly is the Wild West. There is so much that is currently today unknown about technologies, policies. It's a very volatile market. And so it's also very much subject to interpretations. And it's not just from, and this is my personal opinion, but it's not just one person's responsibility, because the utility companies, the net metering corporations, and the solar companies all are part of this package in driving the money into the market. There's been laws in the past about if you were a homeowner and you wanted to put solar panels on your rooftop and your neighbor had a tree that provided shading, which property owner's rights took precedence, and that was subject to interpretation. What we're talking about here, I think, is also subject to interpretation, but what I would suggest to the sheriff is to really pay attention to the facts. Somebody brought up the UL, and that is a very significant fact that should be taken into consideration. Solar companies, any product, any electrical code cannot go to the market without becoming UL certified. The solar companies that these net metering corporations are dependent on have to go through the same process. So to have one party in that package be exempt from that is just, well, that's just wrong. There should be a reason for it. The installers who are installing the net metering products also need to be appropriately certified. There was a solar panel installation that was made a few years ago in the UCSF campus building that did catch on fire. And what then, because it's a wild, wild west, what it does is, because nobody has really gone through due diligence on some of these questions, it becomes a thing of point exercise. Was it the product manufacturer? Was it the installer? Was it the local authority that didn't enforce? So in this wild west environment where that industry has actually become the #1 industry, and money will speak, it does, I think, behoove local communities and to the executive arm of those law enforcement agencies to listen to the facts and take action from that grassroots perspective. I think that the direction the effort is going into will get attention, will hopefully look at attention, but I don't believe that recall of the local law enforcement agencies is potentially the only way to proceed with this. Product recalls. So my question, I think, more for you, Joshua, is I'm not familiar with what are the product recall efforts that are also underway. If you're aware, besides PG&E, there are other utility companies that are using smart meters that don't have the same level of performance.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Let's recall the smart meter. I'd much rather recall the smart meter than the sheriff. These things are dangerous, and like any dangerous product that's inflicting harm, they need to be halted. I think that the momentum and the way that this has been sold to the public. I mean, did you get this in your mailbox recently? They're feeding off of people's desperation about global environmental catastrophe looming, and they're playing off of people's guilt and feeling like they're not doing enough. That look, if you're opposing smart meters, you're opposing a healthy environment, and this is the most cynical, wrong-headed approach to the issue. I mean, I think everyone can agree that we're facing some serious ecological breakdown in the not too distant future, and we need to figure out how to do that. Now, what's problematic is that these technocratic solutions are being put forward, saying, oh, well, we don't have to change our lifestyles, we don't have to, reduce our consumption or live simpler lifestyles. Technology will do it for us, and it'll allow us to maintain this fiction that we can continue expanding our economy with no limits on a limited biosphere and a limited planet. And that's a fiction, and that's a dangerous fiction, and it is the Wild West. And I would say if we don't draw the line with pulsating microwave devices on every home, they could put a cell tower on every school, on every public building, on every mountaintop in the county, and not have anywhere left in the county where you can go to escape this stuff, or even the planet. I mean, that's what they're planning. They're planning satellites that will rain down radiation on every single square inch of this planet, so there'll be, for electro-sensitive people, there will be nowhere left to run.
And it's killing the bees.
And it's killing the bees, and it's undermining our food supply. So it's like, where do we draw the line? For a lot of people, the smart meter is the line in the sand. It's like, we cannot accept this. If we accept this, then, and like the Wild West, people get hurt, people get shot, people get killed. And we don't want a situation where the public is so outraged at the impotence of our elected officials, of our law enforcement, that people have to take matters into their own hands and steal a tank and knock down cell towers or smash smart meters or anything like that. We don't want that to happen. That's a symptom of a system that's broken. And it's not the way that things should be. But obviously, if people feel like their safety is being threatened, they will break the law in order to protect their communities. But obviously that's not ideal.
So we're running out of time here, folks. I do want to get as much information out as possible and get as many questions answered as possible. So folks asking questions can keep it as short as possible, and if you folks guys can keep it as close as possible, that'd be great too. I'd like the Miss Piggy, and then the lady in the plum sweater, and then Lynn, and then we'll start over.
Yes, I'm Peggy Sue, so I'm the unofficial mascot for PG&E, dumping smart meters on California. So Sheriff Wowak, I have a question for you. Have you read a book that's called The County Sheriff by Sheriff Richard Mack?
No, I haven't.
I would be most pleased to get you a copy of that because, sir, you are more powerful than the president if you will use the power vested in you by the people who duly elected you. Thank you.
And I have to admit that a few months ago with the smart meter talk, I was very complacent. Didn't think anything of it. Went out one day, came back, the smart meter was on. Nothing happened right away. And then I started getting some symptoms. I went to the doctor because my legs were tingling and my arms were tingling. I was getting really hot at night. Didn't attach anything to smart meters at all. The ringing started in my ears a couple of weeks ago. I live in a dome house. Acoustically, it's really strange to begin with. The smart meter is literally 3 inches away from my face if I'm on the computer, probably 6 feet away from my head. I have now moved from the bedroom into the living room. I have a higher ceiling, so I get less. I've talked to PG&E 5 different times. The first time, the woman was sugary sweet. The second time, it was good cop, bad cop. The second time, I got badgered and berated. The third time, a nice person came along again. The fourth time, somebody initiated a call and was trying to tell me that the opt-out is in the works, it takes some time, they wouldn't see anything till the end of the year. I want to know if there's any way I can get this up. I mean, I'm looking at websites, it's like you have the right to have this taken off and get an analog. Every single place I've called, you can't find an analog. And what I had heard from the PG&E guy who came to look at the smart meter is that as fast as they're taking the analog meters off, they're crating them up and shipping them probably to Mexico.
I have an analog meter, and I'd be happy to go and remove your smart meter for you and install it.
Was the sheriff arrested for that?
That's right.
Well, Lynn, you're next, and then Jeff.
I'll try to make it 2 quick questions. One, for Josh, and thank you both for being here and helping us get both sides kind of an understanding. What I'm getting is if I am able to keep a smart meter from my house, but the 3 neighbors across the street, the 3 neighbors who live behind me, and both neighbors on the side think it's a really great thing, I'm living right in the middle of this zone. It sounds like my only recourse is to get out of town if I'm sensitive. Is that correct?
That's why the opt-out program is a distraction and it's meaningless. And these things, the transmissions go up to a mile or 2. So we are living in a mesh network of transmissions constantly pulsing. And you're absolutely right. If you opt out and you stand firm in your property, you're there 24 hours a day with a pitchfork saying, "This is my property, get off." If the Wellington comes on, you can't, I mean, this is what happens. We've had multiple reports of people in smart meter free zones declared within the neighborhood where a neighbor will say, we'll be at home, let's say a mother watching her kids, Wellington will knock, she'll say, no, I don't want it, get off our property, please. Okay. Then they'll go next door, start installing 10 feet from the bedroom window, the children, and the mother goes up, no, I know my neighbor, he doesn't really want one. And he's not here, and they're apparently not on the delay list, and the mother stands in his way, and he calls the police come and enforce the Wellington installer's right to install the meter. And so you have this bizarre situation where even in cases where the community itself, the immediate community, an immediate living space, decides we don't want this, that law enforcement is on the side of forcing this onto us. And the fact that the World Health Organization now considers it a Class 2B carcinogen, I mean, do I have the right to go into my neighbor's living room and douse it with DDT? That's in the same category as not radio frequency radiation. No, I don't. Why should it be different for Wi-Fi or even the stronger pulses from smart meters? It's a bizarre situation, and it comes from a lack of regulation and this kind of Wild West, philosophy. But that is why the county passed the law and why we need it enforced. We need a free zone, a safe area that is free of these pulsing evil devices.
I had two questions. The other one was for the sheriff.
I need to interrupt. I'm sorry. Speaking of the Wild Wild West, we need to round up. A blue Mazda is walking a car in. Can somebody? Is it being dealt with?
Far corner.
Far corner. Does anyone have a blue Mazda?
I get some Mazda, I'm not sure.
Okay. Far corner. Somebody possibly blocking someone in. Okay. Well, hopefully we can get that worked on. If you think it might be your car, please go check. Thank you.
Is it a white truck with a shell on the back with Wellington?
The other question is for you, Sheriff. If I obviously cannot be home 24 hours a day, and I can't sit myself next to my smart meter 24 hours a day. If I have a sign up that says no trespassing, you'll be prosecuted or whatever like that, is there any recourse if they come and install it anyway with this big sign permanently installed onto the house?
Yes, the answer is yes. You have, and just like, and I forget who it was that has the cage installed. If a utility installer goes against your wishes as the homeowner, and you've taken all the steps and documented them, and Josh has got some great instructions on how to call the opt-out, record the telephone call, give your address and tell people when you don't want them on your property, and then document that. If you then subsequently have a meter installed, you may call law enforcement and ask them to document it for referral to the district attorney's office. If the district attorney refuses to criminally prosecute in that case, you can take that law enforcement documentation to civil court on your behalf.
Thank you.
Why do we have to go through that process? Why don't we have any rights?
Yeah.
Those are your rights.
The rights to, but in our lives
We need to stay in order. We've got a lot of people waiting for questions right now.
those steps on top of our own time crunches. See, in our lives, we're not causing other people grief and harm. We're just trying to live our lives. But when other entities come into our lives and cause us grief and harm, sorry.
Go for it. And then Suzanne.
Okay. Well, I did just want to follow up again on the Wellington yard. I just wanted to run worst case scenario. What are you afraid of would happen if you did actually go and chain up the yard and say this is actually illegal? What is the worst case scenario that you're afraid of? And because a lot of this is open to interpretation, and it sounds like you very well could argue that you do have a case for having authority over this. And right now, what we're looking for as a community is we're looking for a hero, someone who will take risks, who will challenge those ideas. Or the question is, are you looking to pass the buck and just duck this issue and be an ostrich? And that's what I'm making a decision. I wasn't planning on signing the recall, but from right now, what I hear, and you're an elected official that's supposed to be a leader, I'm hearing an ostrich.
If I was an ostrich and ducking the issue, I wouldn't have come here tonight. I wasn't invited here. I found your forum on the web, and I read it in the paper, and I told my wife who's sitting in the back corner, we're going. I'm not ducking the issue, and I'm not an ostrich, and an ostrich would not stand up here and say, no, I'm not going to enforce that ordinance. I'm telling you I can't. I said in the beginning we have to agree to disagree. What you're asking me, what would happen if we padlocked Wellington? You've said it tonight. That's the Wild Wild West on steroids.
What would happen?
Going and taking law enforcement action and legal action that then subsequently uses tax dollars and legal lawsuits and gets determined to be illegal is a waste of the tax dollars.
Some fights are worth fighting.
And you're doing everything that you can within the law to do that. And I applaud you for doing that.
Yes, I do. And I don't think you're an ostrich at all, and I appreciate your being here. It's great to have both sides and an open discussion. I wanted to echo what Ms. Piggy said about Sheriff Macville. I think that's an invaluable tool for you in particular and would encourage that. And I also think that this particular issue, or many issues, are reflective of things going on across the country. Probably every county in this country needs somebody to stand up for us, we the people, against the kind of bureaucracy and, system upon system of regulation and hidden law and scrutinized, convoluted meaning. We need that, and that's what we look for a sheriff to do. And I think Sheriff Mack would make that eminently clear.
I'll have to do the research on Sheriff Mack's book. I appreciate you bringing that up.
It'll show you your whole real power. It'll show you what's real power.
I'm familiar with Sheriff Mack and where he worked and his travels and his
You have a lot more power
lectures.
than you know you have.
And we have no way out. There's no place for us. As Josh pointed out, do you have $1 million to get through this? We don't. No, yeah, right, not in this economy. And, who wants to spend $1 million on that?
I'm Dr. Ann Lopez, and I want to thank you very much for both of you for being here. And I would just like to know, Sheriff, if you're not in charge of protecting the public health when the science is so clear about these smart meters, who does protect the public health from corporate abuse? Can Monsanto come into all of our yards and spray all of their crap all over our yards? I mean, who is in charge of protecting me from this horror as a citizen? I would like to know that. And please don't say the PUC, because we all know
That's
the
my
PUC. Well, the PUC is corporate. They're corporate. I mean, I know that from living in Felton and going through the whole thing of getting rid of the corporate water system that we had. We dealt with the PUC. They are definitely on the side of the corporations. Who protects us from corporate abuse? I want to know whether it's from Monsanto, PG&E, whatever corporation comes up with the nearest monstrosity. And I would like to just say that corporations, this is a history of business in this country. You put out your product, tell everybody it's safe, then the scientists do the studies, and after the studies are done and so many people are lined up as dead, then they decide to withhold or withdraw or whatever. None of us here want to be guinea pigs. So who is protecting our safety? The science is clear on this.
Doctor, I thank you for the question. That's the answer you won't be happy with, and that is, right now, the person that's in charge of regulating this issue is the California Public Utilities Commission. The woman sitting behind you, in both her question and her statement, gave you the other options that are there. There are recall options, there are options through your legislature, and I'm sure she has a number of others, having worked in the different fields that she has. And she brought out those answers from Josh as well. There are a number of others, but it's not the criminal justice system.
Why don't we have a county-wide agency that can take care of this, especially in progressive Santa Cruz County?
Well, you also, a couple of people brought up some issues that were new to me as well. The UL listing and the approval of the But a deputy sheriff in a criminal justice system isn't the one that enforces that. That's your planning department. That's code enforcement from the planning department that would do that. And so from this discussion tonight, one of the takeaways I'm having is to go back to county council, to sit with Josh and county council, and to ask, does our code enforcement in our planning commission or our planning department and the planning commission have any jurisdiction over this? But again, I keep going back to something that I hate to bore you with. It is not a criminal justice matter. It's not handcuffs, fingerprints, and photographs matter.
Okay, we're going to do 2 more questions, folks. 2 more questions. Let's see, who have I not called? A gentleman in the green jacket back there, and the gentleman in the green sweater in front of him. Yeah, you have.
Well, here. I don't know if it's so much a question. I'm the one that had the cameras smashed, and I just want to say the real assault for me is having 13 smart meters next to my bed and 14 on the side. That was, what happened was nothing. I mean, that has been absolutely horrendous. I mean, I've never felt anything like it. It's destroying my nervous system. I can't be in my house. It's uninhabitable after 20 years. It's a total assault. And I have a passion flower vine that, it's beautiful and lush. The leaves are all falling off. The bees are gone. The flowers are, it's a delicate plant, so it's reacting. But the fact that already the bees are gone, this is a weapon. I mean, this is really dangerous. And I know that, I appreciate the sheriff being here and, of course, Josh. But, we are dealing with corporate fascism. My father was a Holocaust survivor. We are dealing with fascism in this country. It's not in the same scale. It's not in the same way. But we have corporations that are running roughshod over us and have taken over this country. We don't have a democracy. No. And that's why I appeal to the sheriff. I appeal to everyone. I don't know. We're going to have to figure this out. But we have to deal with the fact that we're up against fascism. I don't know what else to say.
I think sadly you're absolutely right, and with these major global fundamental issues like global pollution and wireless rollout, at some point you got to look at the powers that be and go, these are the powers that are causing this. These are the powers that are working, and that is the definition of fascism, when corporations work with government against the people or for the benefit of profit. And we can either go back tonight, go to our separate homes, maybe have headaches, maybe try to sleep on the other side of our homes, maybe try and put up foil on the walls, maybe try to mitigate it. Or we can get together and say, enough is enough, we're coming together as a community, we're not going to wait for anyone else to solve this problem for us, we're going to do it right here, and we're going to all go as a group over to your home, buy 13 analog meters, and replace them. And you know what, if PG&E wants to try and have us arrested or switch off your power, let them. But let's not let people suffer in our community who are being attacked, not only assaulted by the installers, but by the constantly pulsing microwave radiation. I mean, it is unacceptable, and if I was free tomorrow, let's do it. Let's just get together and go do it, because it's just not okay to allow people to continue to suffer like this and to stand quietly as plants and animals also suffer. It's just not okay.
One more question, gentleman at the button, the green sweater.
Well, what can I say after that? So I want to address the consciousness, the metaphysical aspect of it. The pressures are heating up. I'm on private land, it's family land. I've opted out. I do not trust PG&E as honoring that. I didn't know about documented. I phoned twice. Mentally, to take the stress off, building a moat, alligators playing safe. If they come in, I'm going to make a stand. I've got an 88-year-old mother that I'm taking care of, but damn it, somebody's gonna make a stand. You know, I grew up in the community, third generation. I believe that stuff in cities. And it's not holding up. Every time we go up against an insurance agent, we get pelted down. Some of us speak and we come out maybe even. But emotionally and mentally, the crunch is on, we feel it. I don't know if we're the canaries. And Josh made a point, you don't want to degenerate into a society without laws. Because, but I want to go one step further. What happened Wednesday it impacted how I feel. This country, they had all kinds of forums on the high school level on bullying. People took them lie, how it happened, there were people in authority, the teachers, and even the parents, they hung back. Anyway, the pressure is on. The only thing we have is we have this group. I've only met with these people. I run into Wellington. They've been gentlemen. I was out at 41st and 38th one time, and they brought me a candy bar, which I set aside. But this individual is strong on man, and we go amongst ourselves. These are the types of people that are hiring. If they are, we're going to have to stand up in our little ways. And that's my concern. Maybe I'm jumping ahead, but after hearing this, I don't think I am jumping ahead. There's a point where we have to defend ourselves. And that may be in the future, but we're feeling in our gut. That's all I have to say. Thank you for coming. I think the forum is good to get both sides. We won the water fight in Felton. The people went up to the PUC. Some of them in the 80s said it was a waste of time. I think you pointed out these are appointed by the governor. I don't think they have the checks and balances. In fact, they even went so far as to want to have a separate fund like Park Service. Where does it stop?
Thank you. We won the water issue in the San Lorenzo Valley, and there's no reason why we can't win this issue and get the whole wireless mesh network disabled, which is what needs to happen. Not some opt-out, not even a community-wide opt-out, just the whole thing. Pull the plug, you know. And I share your skepticism. I think a year ago when we started working on this issue, and it was just a matter of like organizing Scotts Valley, I tended to think that, this is still a country and it's still a society that respects law, that whether you're a corporation or individual, you have to follow the law. But it's like over the last year, okay, we found out that they're not UL certified. No regulatory agency is willing to go up against PG&E. We found out that the Wellington Energy worked for 3 weeks without a license from the Contractor State License Board. We went to them, lodged a formal complaint. You actually have to be hiring the contractor to they're allowed to break the law in so many different ways, violating FCC regulations. And it comes a point where you're like, okay, if you're a corporation, you really don't have to follow the law. And even if thousands of people are being injured and hurt, and I think that that you're absolutely right. There does come a point where you realize that your family's safety is more important than the laws that aren't being enforced. And we do need to look after our own, because was it Niemöller said, like, they come after the Jews, I wasn't a Jew, let them be taken away. They come after the blacks, I wasn't a black. If we don't stand up for the electro-sensitive people and the people who are suffering and the people who are being assaulted and assaulted by 13 meters on their wall forcibly, then there's going to be no one left to stand up for us when they come haul us away in the middle of the night. And it's really upsetting. But that looks like where things might be going, and it's really scary. But that we need our sheriff to stand up.
It's only the petitions.
I have them, yeah. I just want to say thank you to Sheriff Wowak.
Question here really quick.
Not so much a question, but just knowing this gentleman as I do. Before the week is over, I bet he will have read as much about Sheriff Mack as anybody ever will, and learn a little bit about that. The fourth item on the recall petition about the search in Fall Creek Park, I can tell you as a person from the Search and Rescue Department in the Sheriff's motorcycle posse, we are getting much more education at this point. We're also getting called out much more often for anyone that shows up. This man does respond. Give him a chance, but write him a letter. Thank you.
So I'd like to, is this on?
The mic is turned off. Just hit the switch right on the mic.
I think it's on.
Maybe it's on now. So I'd like to thank Joshua Hart and Phil Wowak for coming in tonight and having a very exciting discussion with us all. So we give both a hand. And it just so happens we have our special Freedom Forum copy of Sheriff Mack's, the County Sheriff, America's Last Hope.
That's some light reading to do tonight. I want to thank you all. I appreciate you having me here. If it was uncomfortable for you, with me being here, imagine being me. Thank you very much.
I look forward to sharing this bottle of Martinelli's sparkling apple grape juice with you over a discussion. And I hope that we will not have to turn in 14,000 of these, but and I hope we can, defend the public and do what's right. And but I appreciate you coming out and having discussion. I appreciate all of you too. So anyone who wants to organize and think about what we can do afterwards, we'll have a little discussion. Thanks.